Okairi, welcome back to my channel, May Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we're going to be doing an extremely late, but I promise there's a reason for it, July wrap-up. Now, July was the last month of reading that I did before my kind of, at this point, well-known, well-talked about on this channel, burnout that I had for the internet, not necessarily for reading, but just for like booktube world and the internet in general. And so I never really got around to making a wrap-up of this amazing month of reading. And the reason I want to go back now and talk about it is because I kind of had a revelation during this reading month. The main focus of my reading in July of this year was the Indie Accords Readathon. This readathon was hosted by many people, but the person that kind of let me know about it and I connected with about it was Lana over on Lore and Lullabies. If you don't subscribe to her, if you don't follow her, please do. I'll have her linked down below, but she put together this wonderful readathon that was specifically focused on reading self-pub and indie books. This was something I wanted to dabble in for a really long time, but I just didn't know how to start or how to request books or what to do. And the hosts of this were so good at, in the Discord, giving people advice. You know, this is what actually constitutes as an indie book. This is where you can find them. And they were just so good at facilitating, you know, the connection to that world for people who weren't used to it. And so that really kind of jump-started my interest in doing research in that more non-traditional publishing world. And through that research, I made a TBR. Some of them were hits, some of them were not. We'll get into that a little bit, you know, in a second here. But I found some all-time favorites through this as well. And it really just kind of sparked this desire to support people who are in the non-traditional publishing world. The type of stories and storytelling that you can find is much broader because they don't have a large publishing house, you know, guiding them in how they should present their stories. So in my experience from reading this, I've seen so many different writing styles and different perspectives that you wouldn't get from a traditionally published book, and I really enjoyed that, and that's something I want to explore and give more of a chance to in the future. So while I did read some traditionally published books in this month, let's go ahead and start with the more indie and self-pub books. The first book I read was Dreams of the Dying by Nicolas Lietzau. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but he's a German author, so, you know, the last name is not my native language, but I'm doing my best here. This book was amazing. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars, but the way that the author explored the idea of mental health was so unique, and the like metaphoric aspect that he used, I don't want to, you know, give anything away, but there's a lot of this book is mental, let's put it that way. It's all about mental, not just health, but mental state of people. Of course, physical things matter, but our mental state and where we are and the control we have over that has such a huge effect on the way we live our daily lives, and he explored that so beautifully in this story. Our main character in this story is an ex-mercenary named Jesper, and he is wandering the world, kind of doesn't really have a purpose, and he's not really upset that he doesn't have a purpose. He's just kind of floating in the wind, and he's happy to be doing that. But then he receives a summons to the king's castle because they need his services. And suddenly fate just seems to throw the responsibility of the world literally on his lap. The king has fallen into some weird coma-like state, and no one knows why or how to get him out of it. And Jesper and the other people who are contacted by, you know, the royal palace seem to have the skills that might be necessary to figure this out. And so this is all about our characters, you know, delving into this mystery and trying to figure out what's going on. This book was extremely unique. I've never read anything like it before, and I really enjoyed my time reading it. Like I said, I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I can't really put my finger on exactly why it is at 5 stars. Maybe the pacing was a bit slow, but overall, the character work, the themes, the world building, it was really, really well done, and I would highly recommend this to anyone. This next book is the one that was the all-time favorite that I found throughout this readathon, and that was Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. Now, this is a pretty well-known author. He's won some indie publishing and self-pub awards before, so you may have heard his name. He also has a bunch of other series out there. But this particular one is the one I decided to pick up by him, and I was blown away. In this first installment, we follow our main character, Escara, or Eska for short, who is a sorceress in this world, or a magician. But she was a sorceress for one nation, which was at war with another nation, and the other nation won. So she ends up being taken as a prisoner of war and put in the worst prison that exists. The name of this place is the Pit, and it is miles and miles below ground where you never see sunlight ever. And so we follow her as she kind of carves her own way of living out in this prison. The world is brutal, but honestly, Eska matches this world. If you want like a bitch queen, morally, not even gray, morally black character who does fucked up shit, but you still kind of support her, this is the book for you, because that is Eska. I don't want to give too much more away because it's not that long. I mean, it looks a little bit thick, but the words aren't too big. So it's not that long. I tabbed the shit out of it, but that's the first installment. And then I loved this so much that I would have given this 15 gajillion stars if I could, that I ended up buying the second and the third book. The second book is The Lessons Never Learned, and then the third book is From Cold Ashes Risen. Now, in the first book, you do hear about the rules for this high cost, like hard magic system. You do learn about it, but in the second and the third book, you get to see the consequences of those things. And also, actions have consequences. So if you're someone who likes that kind of logical consistency in your books, these have that, because there are choices made that really should not have been made and are very, very shocking, but can't be taken back. And the consequences of those things do come full force. The magic system is also just so unique. Like, I've never read anything like it before. And that goes along with the world building. I have never really seen a world like this before. And so all of these like places we got to go and things we got to see were just, I don't know, I was obsessed with it. I just wanted to find out more. And so I thought this was actually just going to be a trilogy, but Rob J. Hayes has also like recently mentioned on Twitter that he's writing a fourth book in this series, which I'm so hyped for. I will be purchasing it ASAP as soon as I can get my hands on it. So I don't know when the release date is for that, but I do know that he's working on it. And so it's thanks to the Indie Accords Readathon that I was able to find this golden nugget in this world that I just adore so much. And I'm just so thankful to have my eyes opened to this whole new world. A whole new world. I read 2 more books for this readathon, the first one being A Court of Honey and Ash. Now, this was available for free on Kindle Unlimited, which is a really nice thing about Kindle Unlimited, because if you don't know, a lot of the self-pub books or indie books that are kind of out there are released through Amazon. And so they are, automatically go into the Kindle Unlimited selection. So if you have that subscription, you have access to a lot of self-pub books that you may not know that you have access to. So I'd highly recommend looking into that. But this book was from that. Now, as I think you can assume with A Court of Something and Something name, this has to do with Fae. And it was a good book. Like, it didn't blow my mind or anything, but I enjoyed it. It was fast-paced. It's like a romantic fantasy. I think the correct way to say that is fantasy romance. Anyway, it's a fantasy romance. And like I said, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed my time. And I would continue with the series. I do plan to continue with the series, actually. But I only ended up giving this one 3 stars, I think. And the last non-traditional published book that I read was Father in the Forest. Well, the last book that I tried to read was Father in the Forest. Now, this premise seemed really interesting. It was about a young girl who has, like, pupils that don't match, that, like, make her stand out as part of this unique race. that has been colonized. So she hears this rumor that there's another girl in this faraway town that has the same pupils that she has. And she's like, wait a minute, a kindred spirit? And so it's supposed to be kind of about her journey to get there. And while the themes really seemed on point for me and I wanted to see this girl's journey, the writing just, yeah, the writing was not there. We would skip time frames, time zones, locations without any kind of transition. I was often floundering trying to figure out how we got from point A to point B in one page. It needed an editor quite badly. I think that could be the other side of reading, more indie or self-published books, is they don't have the whole system behind them to double, triple, quadruple check their work. So you can be left with some awkward phrasing sometimes, but this was unreadable for me, which is a shame to say because if I remember correctly, I think it had some good reviews on Goodreads. So I don't know, it just didn't work for me. So I did have this one dud, one so-so book, but the other two books that I read for this readathon really opened my eyes to new things, new focuses that I can have, and I definitely plan to focus on that more in 2022 on my channel. And finally, I read 3 traditionally published books. 2 of them I loved, one of them was a dud for me. So let's start with the dud, and that was unfortunately The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. I was so excited for this because I love sapphics first off, and this was marketed as one of the 3, Crown Trilogy sapphic books. And it was supposed to be 2 worlds at war and women trying to find their place in a world that doesn't necessarily have a place for them, with power anyway. And I was so excited for this, but I was so bored. I was so bored reading this story. There were little moments in between the boredom where there would be some political machinations or some world building that was really interesting. I do think the world it was set in was unique and interesting, and the magic system was fascinating. But we didn't delve into it or explore it to any extent, to the extent that I would have liked anyway. And I felt like we spent, I don't even know what we spent the time doing in this book. I was bored, but I don't remember what we were doing during those bored times. I like character-based books, so I don't think it was character exploration. This book didn't work for me. I was bored. I really had to push myself to finish it. And I did in the end, but I think I ended up giving this 3 stars, but thinking on it, it's almost a 2.5, honestly, for me. And the relationship was dry as hell. Spark, where? Friction, where? Oh God, it was so dry. This next book, though, I gave 5 stars to, which is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. I loved The Poet X by her. I also read Clap When You Land by her, so I expected to love this book, and I did. It was amazing. I love, my life really revolves around food. My husband's a chef. We've got a restaurant, so the food focus of this book just hit my heart. Also, our main character's perspective was just wonderful, seeing her interactions with her daughter and her grandmother, and the way that she navigated through the world. Oh my God, I loved this book so much. This is a very popular author. I think most people have read this book. If you haven't, I highly recommend it because it's a coming of age story that I think anyone can connect to at any point in their lives, and there's something you can get from this story. So highly recommend, give this 5 stars. I don't have it for my shelves yet, but I definitely plan to. And the last one I read was 5 stars, and also a 5-star prediction from me, which is Monday's Not Coming. This is by the same author who wrote Grown, Tiffany D. Jackson, and Grown blew me away. I was crying on a public bus reading that, and so I expected this book to hit my heart the way that the first book did, and oh my God, it did. It did not disappoint at all. I was devastated. I was also so shocked about how little details in this book actually match my life. So this book is based on where I come from in America. So that, first and foremost, was a shock. There's also references to miscarriages, which have a significance in my life. And then I also found out that the main character and I share a middle name. And I was like, this is crazy how much I connect, actually, not just, with the story, but with the actual, framework of the story, how much it connects to my life. And the plot twist at the end, I was not ready, guys. I was not ready. I was warned, but I still was not ready. This book follows our main character, Claudia, whose best friend Monday, one day, just doesn't show up to school. And Claudia is the only one who seems to notice, so she brings it up to her teachers, her mother, the people around her, her friends, and no one seems to really take an interest in it or care in the way that Claudia does. And so this is the story of her figuring out what happened to Monday and what's really going on. And oh God, it's not an easy read. It's difficult. The twist at the end is heart-wrenching, but it is so well crafted, so well put together. I bought a physical copy of this for my bookshelf. I don't have it with me in Japan, but it is in the States. This as well as Grown. Tiffany D. Jackson has not let me down yet, and I'm excited to sit down and read these physically, both of these books, and just take my time with them, especially with Monday's Not Coming. Knowing the twist at the end, I want to see the build-up that Jackson has, for this and all the tidbits, because I'm sure that there were tidbits once you know the twist that you can find on the way getting there, right? So, yeah, this was amazing. Gave it 5 stars. Blew my mind. That concludes my 6 months late July wrap-up. I just really wanted to do this because I found, some new favorite authors, and I found this new love for indie books and for self-pub, and I just wanted to share that with the people on my channel and recommend the books that made me fall in love with it. So in 2022, you can definitely be expecting more of a focus on that because I'm just so excited to delve into that world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell. I'd love to have you as part of this community, and I appreciate it. But for now, I'm gonna head out. Jane!